at that moment, we entered a facility belonging to what is now the Iranian Revolutionary Guard. And well, this has been seen in different places today. They even burned one of the bases in the capital, in Tehran, belonging to the Revolutionary Guard of that country. That's the military group that the Ayatollah has to control. It's important to remember that the Ayatollah, the supreme leader, controls an army separate from the constitutional army, which is controlled by the president. And that army, the Revolutionary Guard's army, is bigger than the regular army, the constitutional army they have. And that's the one the protests are targeting and attacking the most, trying to show that they're no longer afraid. There are already 50 people who have lost their lives in an obviously terrible situation, and they are showing constant blockades. We'll discuss the situation in Tehran later.
Specifically, it was the Ministry of Defense office that was burned,
which means that the defense has also been under attack. We'll talk about who's escaping right now. It seems like someone's escaping. Some high-ranking officials are leaving, not only Russians and people from other countries, but also from Iraq itself, from its own high-ranking officials. Let's talk about that situation, but let's start with this base takeover that's happening in that region. They say that within this movement, which I would already call a rebellion that has already had many casualties. Unfortunately, out of the 50, at least as far as we know right now, 8 are minors. That part also needs to be clarified. We are seeing protests in different places in an impressive way. Just a little while ago, the latest reports we saw were from 4 in the morning and people were out in the streets. I mean, it's been really intense in different places. And then just like that, a protest ends in one area and starts up in another. And well, there have been like 3.
Yes, basically it has spread even more today. Let's say that the message given today by Prince or former Crown Prince Teresa Pabrani has really resonated with the people of Iran. And well, the comment from now about the Iranian government building that was set on fire, well, there is little information right now, although images are scarce, because there is this difficulty with the internet that I mentioned to you, Pepe, since this morning. And well, these images of a structure in flames have been shared, and the protesters, well, with their cell phones recording, cheering, and well, asking for the return of this Pabani.
Well, there are messages that they have sent to Netanyahu, to Trump, to other leaders, like saying, well, this is the moment, right? If they want to help this rebellion, well, this is the moment, obviously. Well, what is known and what has been warned is that there are intelligence movements within countries close to Iran. I mean, countries close to the regime, like Russia itself and other intelligence groups that are looking to attack these leaders, the protesters. And on the other hand, also the other way around, intelligence from other countries, possibly Israel or the United States, that have been, for example, bringing Starlink antennas so that the internet doesn't get cut off. Let's look at both sides. The point is that people are upset. For decades, all the abuses committed by these ayatollahs have been documented. And well, now in a movement where young people have played the main role. Although we've also seen merchants, political leaders, even police officers who have spoken out. They know that we are on the side of the protests and they have joined, let's say, the demand for the removal of this regime.
Exactly. In fact, today there were more closures of bazaars and shops because of the protests. You already mentioned the intelligence agencies operating inside.
Yes. Well,
currently the reports are positive. As Pepe mentioned, at least 50 people may have died. The Iranians have not left the streets. They are still fighting, and Mossad is active, but discreetly, in Iran. Remember that, well, about 2 days ago, the Iranian government took the life of someone they say was from Mossad. So, well, they are really keeping a close eye on this issue of who is moving around there. But anyway, Mossad agents are now installing Starlink antennas for specific Iranians, according to media reports.
I know they're from Mossad.
It's believed they're from Mossad. Yes, you can't confirm that kind of thing, but it's being given to journalists and activists so they can share some of these images. It's reported that some people who have Starlink are struggling. I mean, it's not like it's working that easily, even though they have Starlink. They're having problems because the Iranian government has implemented certain things to slow down the speed. And Mossad has discovered that, well, supposedly Mossad has discovered that the members of the Revolutionary Guard Corps had supplies, weapons, and water stored in certain areas. And right now, basically, they haven't approached the area out of fear that people will find out what's happening there. And at this moment, Jamenei isn't hiding where he is. I mean, not even the people in the government are very sure where Jamenei is. He already did this during the 12-Day War.
He had already done it before. Was there distrust at that time of some internal betrayal? And so they preferred that not even the closest people could know where he was. In fact, at one point, several leaders came out to say where he was, because they started to think that maybe he had already passed away.
They even began searching for a replacement.
Or for what exactly? Did they start saying over there that this guy was next? They mentioned a person, not his son anymore. They mentioned someone else as the next one, Ayatollah, but well, the thing is that he's an Ayatollah who has been very orthodox, who has been very extreme in his positions internally, and the discontent has been growing. There are a lot of people who left. We're talking about a lot of people who have been living outside of Iran for years, well, for decades, precisely because of this situation. And right now, well, this person who has insisted that even though he is the so-called crown prince, he gave up that claim a long time ago. And that in any case, he could be available for a transitional government. But he insists that, well, this part would have to move towards, well, some kind of parliamentary democracy or something like that. That's a topic that is still being discussed. Is there a closeness between this person and political groups in the United States? Well, we'll see what happens. But beyond that issue, there is a sense of discontent among the people. The universities are also fully involved right now. And well, at least this time we can see such a strong mobilization in rural areas, in cities, in the city where he was born. Jamenei, which is usually an area where there is a certain, let's say, special respect for Jamenei. Well, this time, even in that city, which is the holiest city they have, we are also seeing protests, even attacks on mosques, and there have been reports of Qurans being burned. We know that the discontent goes beyond politics. It even extends to religious matters.
Exactly. Look, the numbers are roughly like this, at least as of today. Protests in 111 cities across 31 provinces. Today's protest started at 8 p.m. Is there a set schedule for these? Because, well, it didn't start at the moment when Crown Prince Reza Pahlavi called for it. There's already another call for tomorrow, and tomorrow it will also be at 8 p.m. Analysts argue that today's event has been a success. The slogans that were chanted were basically based on their stance. Very well now to Reza Pahlavi. And well, the topic of Ali Khamenei's hometown obviously draws a lot of attention because it's a very hard symbolic blow. Also in Tehran, the protests spread for the first time to wealthy neighborhoods, so it's no longer just the middle or lower class. One of them is Banak, where wealthy people went out to protest, and the drivers also joined the protests. Today, with horns, while merchants from all the bazaars went on strike.
Let's move on to other information. We'll come back with more about Iran in a moment. There are several very interesting facts that we'll be sharing, but let's also move on to another important point. In a moment, we'll continue with the news about Iran. By the way, is there also information about what's happening at the 13 Atlas? Here's an unpublished and very interesting fact about additional Hubble images. Well, let's say another unusual situation with this comet that keeps surprising us. But let's also talk about what's happening inside Ukraine, which, by the way, is experiencing attacks right now with Oreshnik. Yes, it's really tough. Also, what's happening in Lebanon, well, on different topics that are obviously international matters. What the president said today, not the chancellor, but the president of Germany, is really tough. This is towards Donald Trump, towards the president of the United States, who basically claims that it has been broken, he claims. The German president states that the United States would have destroyed the world order. Or let's say the little order that there was, right? If we can say there wasn't any, well, that little or much order that existed, well, now it's been destroyed. The German president says the United States is destroying this order, and what follows is unprecedented. We're talking about the German president Frank Walker, who made this harsh and unprecedented criticism of the United States.
Today was tough for the United States and for Macron. This morning, he also threw a direct jab at Donald Trump. And now, the president of Germany is making this criticism, which is unprecedented against the United States, accusing the Trump administration of breaking the values that have upheld the world order since World War II. This happened during a symposium in Berlin where Steimer stated that global democracy is under attack like never before. In reference to the recent actions of the United States in Venezuela, yes, because, well, certain rules, well, Trump broke them by making this move.
And the issue, more than Venezuela, I think what they're really looking at is what's closer to them, which is the issue of Greenland. But he does mention the topic obviously about Venezuela. He says, it's about preventing the world from becoming a den of thieves where the unscrupulous take whatever they want, reflecting a growing concern about the unilateralism of the United States, according to the criticism made by the German president. Although the German presidency is, well, largely ceremonial, does Steimer have freedom of expression or strong opinions? This is seen as a sign of worsening relations between Washington and Germany. It should be remembered that the main leader in the country, let's say Germany, is the chancellor, just as in the United States, the president is the top leader, let's say, of the executive. There in Germany, the chancellor is considered the main leader. But as it is set up, let's say it's the so-called president, so they also tend to have strong opinions in this case. According to a recent Arbeitsgemeinschaft der öffentlich-rechtlichen Rundfunkanstalten der Bundesrepublik Deutschland survey, 76% of Germans believe that the United States can no longer be trusted as a partner. Imagine that 76% of a country that is the economic engine of Europe, not of the European Union, because the United Kingdom is no longer part of the European Union. So, the strongest country economically, that the majority, almost 80% say you can't trust the United States as a country, as a partner. Obviously, this is still tremendous. Only 15% in the survey think that the United States would continue to be trustworthy. It's the lowest level ever recorded in Germany, in history. So that obviously draws attention, and it's also a concern. Meanwhile, 69% of those surveyed worried about their safety in Europe, fearing NATO can no longer rely on United States protection. That's part of what you found now. France and the United Kingdom are still seen as reliable allies by about 75% of the German population. Germans think, 75% of them, that France is reliable, that the United Kingdom is reliable. But not anymore. Let's say the body from the north, let's say no. In the end, what Germans are experiencing is a reflection of other countries, not just Germany, right? Obviously, this is also part of what's happening, and moving on to other matters that are also important. There was an ultimatum from Israel, and moving on to what's happening in Lebanon, there was an ultimatum because, well, what people are experiencing in northern Israel is really tremendous, isn't it? For some time now, there's been a situation where Hezbollah, a heavily armed terrorist group, and by the way, they've also played a political role in the southern part of that country, and in the center, they've tried to take power. All of this with sponsorship from Iran. To them, they basically pledge allegiance to the Ayatollah and the Supreme Leader, as he's called, according to reports and what is known, and this has been the case for a long time, the Supreme Leader. The Iranians have wanted to control this entire area. That's why there are pro-Iranian groups within this region that constantly carry out attacks, even against the Iraqi government. And also, they are constantly trying to control and send weapons through Syria to Lebanon, to Hezbollah. Within Syria and Iraq, these groups move around and have been trying to take complete power in Lebanon, something they haven't been able to do so far. But they were very close to doing it.
They even had banks?
There, yes, in an indirect way, right? Well, if they make it, they're selling drugs. Come on, it's a huge issue what you know about Hezbollah itself and what they themselves do. Well, they've even been operating in Venezuela, in Argentina, in Brazil. The Brazilians themselves have already arrested several leaders of that group. In Argentina too, let's see, they operate in different places. Hezbollah serves as the international armed wing alongside another group within the Revolutionary Guard, which is also a group of specialists in charge of carrying out sabotage, cyber attacks, hybrid warfare, and so on. against the interests of the Ayatollah himself. Now, in this case, the ultimatum and the agreement between the United States government, the Lebanese government, and the Israeli government was that Hezbollah was going to withdraw. There was a deadline. There was a river here, and they decided to stay behind it. That's a very old agreement. It's just that they've never followed it, but it's an agreement that's decades old that they're now trying to enforce. They said Hezbollah has to be disarmed and they have to be behind the Ten River that's over there. The thing is, it hasn't happened. They've kept watching as Hezbollah tries to get in, tries to move closer to the border with Israel. And now the Lebanese army makes an announcement in which they claim that Hezbollah has already lost control. That Lebanon, after decades, has managed to take control of the south for the first time in a very long time. The Lebanese army claims that they are already controlling the southern part, and that's, well, important news for the security of that whole area.
Exactly this agreement. This had been promised since the November 2024 agreement, which stopped the hostilities between Israel and Lebanon. Well, specifically Hezbollah. And the United States has actually been pressuring the Lebanese government to achieve this disarmament, to fulfill this commitment, to implement the ceasefire, because Israel had already warned that if the Lebanese government didn't fulfill this, Israel would take action. It wouldn't just sit back and wait for them to do it. The army now claims to have effectively and tangibly cleared the southern region of the Litany River of non-state weapons. Although there are still unexploded munitions and tunnels left, maybe some of those are for disarming, not for exploding.
Exactly. Thank you, Christina, for your comment, and thanks to everyone in the community for joining us, you say. 707 people and just a few likes. What happened? What's up with that? Greetings to the community?
Remember that they're not charged, they're free,
says Pepe. It could be that the United States takes its military forces in Europe and moves them to the Middle East and Africa. Look, good point. And in the end, the military forces in general in Africa, in Europe, etc. Right now, they're basically in Africa. It also depends on the country because Africa also has too many different realities, right? But if you just go to the far north, there's a very serious migration situation from many countries that in the Sahel region and the southern part, they haven't been able to control. Their own countries, their own internal problems that come from many issues that date back to colonialism in that area, but also other problems that go back even further. Some countries like Cambodia and Thailand have divisions. These are divisions made by those who conquered the area, but they are not decisions made by the local populations themselves.
So those divisions are always very poorly made?
Many divisions are very poorly made. I think that if there were a chance to say, let's agree on where you want to be and where I want to be, maybe things would change, since people sometimes understand each other by talking. Good point about what you said. I don't know to what extent the United States could pressure Europe for its own interests, or to what extent Europe would say, you know what, here's a red line that can't be crossed called Greenland or called 10, or an interest. That could also be interesting. How have you been, Leonardo Salus? We'll be happy to read your comments and check them out once the reports are finished, but we'll be paying attention to your comments. Yes?
Save it and show it to us right now, okay?
Save it, post it now, don't delete it. Comment at the bottom, he says. The conflicts are worse, says Baldo. How are you? Cheers, Baldo. Very good. The reality is that we are living in a very conflicted, very, very turbulent time, and there are tremendous realignments happening. And this has been going on for several years. It's just that right now it seems like it's coming to light a little more.
It's a horse of fire.
It's intense now. Let's move on to other matters. Honestly, it really is intense, but now let's move on to other interesting points about what's happening in the world. To make it even more intense, Donald Trump just sent a message to the regime of the Ayatollahs. Just adding a little more fuel to the fire. And look, here, I actually see it more like a blog, yes, but anything can happen. Anything can happen now, especially in these strange times. But Donald Trump did send a warning message, reminding everyone of what he had recently said about the Ayatollah's regime. That if they attacked people, then they could step in and take action. There are messages, and people have even been recording themselves shooting, and now they look very simple, very humble. They're trying to tell Mr. Trump something, I don't know what, but honestly, if they have hope that Trump is going to come or send someone, I honestly don't think that's going to happen. At least not with the way things are right now. It's more like adding a little more fuel to the fire. Trump's warning in an interview that was with the host Hugh Hewitt. Donald Trump warned that the United States could hit the Iranian regime very hard if it continues to eliminate or kill protesters during the demonstrations. Look, you and I know perfectly well how politicians are, and it's not like they care, because people will say, look, yeah, check out what's happening with immigration and customs enforcement, right? I mean, obviously within their own territory. He doesn't care about the protests, but he cares about escalating the issue and increasing pressure. It's obviously necessary for there to be a definite change. We've seen for a long time how the situation has been escalating, how girls and women disappear, how they attack their own people. That's been fully documented for years now. The situation in Iran is terrible and must change. But the fact they're entering the United States, honestly, not even when Israel demanded entry did they go in for more than 40 minutes, attacked a few places, and Donald Trump warned them to let people get out. I mean, come on, he did everything. A whole protocol to avoid getting into trouble and not to escalate a war. Especially because right now, the Make America Great Again people are against getting involved in foreign issues because Trump's promise was not to get involved abroad. The Make America Great Again group is the most conservative and strongest Trump supporters, yet they're notably against getting into conflicts. Abroad, they dislike the Venezuela and Iran issues. That's why they've had to come out and bring out their most extravagant figures like this Scott Miller, like J.D. Vance himself. All these super crazy characters come out to try to sell the idea to everyone else. Telling them it's because of this, it's because of that. Obviously, what's happening in the warning. What's interesting is that there's a balance being made right now from day one when there were no deaths yet. Protests, said Trump. If there are deaths, we're going to go in and we're going to put soldiers inside. In Iranian territory, there was a movement of Delta soldiers who approached the border. Yes, but what is known is that this is a movement together with the Iraqi government to attack the pro-Iranian militias, which I do think they are going to take advantage of.
Which is in Iraq, they can move more easily.
There is an agreement in Iraq, let's say, to attack enemies they have in common. Iraq has some enemies, which are those pro-Iranian militias within the border with Iran. Militias that have caused them a lot of problems, that even operate inside Baghdad and that they haven't been able to get rid of. Well, now Iraq and the United States attacked, or apparently tried to attack, because it's not exactly clear what happened, but at least there were movements seen on this border.
They're also reporting that a high-ranking United States official says this today, Thursday. The CENTCOM is closely monitoring the protests and they're following them. And they're also watching the Friday prayers in Iran, which will be tomorrow. And how does the regime respond to this? And the CENTCOM is closely watching the growing protests against the regime. And well, they're going to be on alert with an F-15 squadron. It's been deployed in the Middle East as part of a normal rotation, but haven't the number of forces there increased? And remember that there is no United States aircraft carrier group in the Middle East at this time. The United States shipboard is currently in the Caribbean. No, they don't have any aircraft carriers there.
No, in any case, there's the base in Qatar where they have certain forces. Honestly, no, I don't think they're interested in getting involved right now. On the contrary, if the movement is already underway and all of this is happening, launching a military operation would be the opposite. I mean, it would be a mistake. Because people want it where there's conflict, I don't know, they break into houses, and that would do a favor for the Ayatollah. So obviously right now it would be a huge mistake to get involved. Right now it's more about intelligence. That's what's going to happen. In fact, intelligence groups have already been reported, both pro-Iranian and anti-Iranian, that are currently operating inside that country. That has also been documented. The same testimonies have observed how they are operating while attacking the population. In fact, several of those police officers we mentioned yesterday have already appeared. One of these videos that has been widely circulated in Iran, where, well, he says they are being ordered to shoot at people. And there are some very graphic images. Obviously, we can't show them here, where you can see, well, you can't really see them.
Yes, well, there are extremely graphic images from the Farsiya area in Iran, which obviously can't be shown, but they are being very aggressive at this moment. Right now, literally, Donald Trump just gave an interview to Fox for this program called Hannity, where he assures that they are willing to act to support the protests in Iran. Obviously, well, no, there haven't been any movements so far, and he says a lot of people are protesting. No one had ever seen anything like what's happening right now. But he has warned Iran that if they start shooting at them, those people are completely unarmed and love their country. That's what he claims, right? But whether that's going to happen is another thing.
The point is that if there's high volatility, we've already seen people who have been leaving. By the way, it's known that right now the minister of the nation has just left.
That knowing Garaji Aragashi?
Do you remember Aragashi? A really tough character, the Minister of Foreign Affairs, a person who usually delivers very strong messages. This person who sometimes takes action. Many believe he is the real leader there, along with President Pezeshkian. But he would be one of the strongest figures right now within Iran. He is the most visible one, the one who appears the most very close to the supreme leader. And now it's known that he has left. There are reports that he went to Lebanon.
It was a state meeting?
It was a state meeting because he's the one in charge of foreign affairs. But what caught people's attention is that he went with his whole family. I mean, no one stayed behind. They all left. So
his wife and all the children
and extra relatives. Let's just say everyone went. Aragashi's family says, sorry, wait, an alleged state visit to Lebanon? How are you supposed to make a state visit to Lebanon? At this moment, when there's such a tough crisis, it doesn't make sense. Actually, what we think is happening here is that the exodus is starting and this isn't right. I mean, come on, we've already seen it. We've already had to deal with several regime collapses or terrible situations where the first thing people do is leave. Who? Those who are informed and have better relations with foreign affairs, like diplomats, ambassadors, or in this case, the Minister of Foreign Affairs. If that man is leaving with his whole family, I also find it interesting to observe that people, including diplomats and their families, diplomats from Australia, from Russia itself, and so on, have also been leaving. Since last week, they have been leaving from Iran. In fact, in Russia's case, it's noteworthy that they even left Israel. I mean, they seem to be expecting something to happen. Russian intelligence is among the most well-informed in that area, along with the Danish, who are also quite sharp. The American, obviously, and the British. There are several intelligence agencies that, over time, you start to notice how they operate, like the ones who are most accurate when it comes to anticipating events. And it's almost like when you see Russia pulling out, well, we saw that Russia pulled out of Venezuela, and we said something's coming, and it happened. In this case, they've pulled out of Iran, Aragashi leaves, so I think something is coming from there. Today, we're talking to you about another topic, about Iran. Let's move on to another issue and then come back to what's happening internally with the people. Are we talking to you about that today? Well, according to Piemonte Libre, it's being reported. Are they showing what we're seeing? What can be observed in these attacks happening over there in the background? Do you remember those attacks that were carried out on a steel factory or at a steel plant with the Oresnik? Well, now we're seeing the Oresnik again, the Russian Oresnik attacking different locations. This time, it's good.
It's Lviv, exactly, which is one of the cities that's very close to Poland. It is striking that it's being done in an area so close to the NATO zone. And well, right now there has also been an attack on Kyiv. Besides Lviv, Kyiv has also been attacked. And well, it was already known. A few hours ago, Zelensky came out to warn that a strong attack was coming tonight, that people should prepare themselves. And well, several neighborhoods in Kyiv have been affected by the attacks. For example, the Dnipropetrovsk district, Darmasky, and residential buildings. Above all, the attacks right now have been in Lviv or Leopolis, the most important city in western Ukraine. It was reported that there were explosions in critical infrastructure, which is what hit Oresnik.
The difference is 50 kilometers from NATO. They're using big weapons, this time some of the biggest. Normally, attacks here had been carried out with drones and artillery. The famous Shahed drones that have been used here, which are, by the way, of Iranian origin, the design is Iranian, even though many are now made in Russia, it's still theirs. Will there be? It's striking that at this moment, no NATO alert has been issued, as usually happens with this kind of attack. Maybe it will come out later and we haven't seen it yet, but usually the maximum alert is issued. The entire border between Ukraine and Poland has already been reinforced for months. Because lately, the attacks have gotten much closer to this area of the border with NATO. And the fact that they're using these Oresnik type weapons, hypersonic weapons, shows that they already have more Oresniks. Which was also known, they hadn't produced many. It's an expensive issue and it's difficult. Well, that's how it is. Even though they're very threatening, it's not that easy to have that kind of weaponry, and that's why we haven't seen it. Maybe the production of Oresniks is already speeding up. Or maybe they're just trying to show strength at a time of weakness because you're losing someone close to you over there in Latin America, which is Maduro, and besides, you can't operate as easily anymore. The issue of ghost oil, because now the United States is putting a stop to the famous ghost ships like this one. Bela 1, which is also an issue that has really bothered the Kremlin, and today Vladimir Putin has already issued several warnings or threats. Yes, since it was already planned for diplomatic escalation. Although so far we haven't seen any decisive action from Russia, it would be the threats have already started. And as always, Russia acts before any warning. It's that the Russian propagandists and close politicians start to come out, like Dmitry Medvedev himself. Identify repetitive or redundant phrases. Remove unnecessary filler words. Keep speaker's point clear. Preserve original perspective. Ensure grammatical correctness. Short in text. Did a deputy show up and say something? What happened is that it came out. Yesterday we talked about it. A Russian deputy who basically said they had to go to the United States to eliminate the big boss, right? That was the message the deputy delivered, raising the tone, but it's not coming from Putin or Sergei Lavrov. They are careful with those forms so that the harsher messages...
So that Putin doesn't get his hands dirty?
Right, so they avoid delivering the toughest messages. But let's say, that's the typical comment, and when things escalate, that's when Dmitry Medvedev, the former Russian president, comes out, since he's usually the one who delivers those messages. Just like in the United States, there's Stephen Miller or J.D. Vance who are the most outrageous when they speak. Well, here they also have their clowns, right? I mean, they're real clowns when it comes to making threats and being super exaggerated in their comments. Why? Well, to instill fear in the enemy. Basically, those are narrative strategies like, let me send out, let's say, the toughest character, right? Not just any character. Several over here.
The loudest one?
They've told us that you have your tough characters even right here. Mexican governments, whether Morena, Partido Acción Nacional or others, always have tough figures. Want to send a strong message? The president isn't going to say it, the female president isn't going to say it, it's going to be said by so-and-so. Who's the tough one, let's say. So that's the strategy they use a lot. This time I see Medvedev very quiet, which surprised me. Yes.
It's just that the laws like that made Trump pretty upset. Maybe they prefer to use it as little as possible. Because last time he did get really intense and Trump got really mad at him, and it even put Putin's relationship with Trump at risk, right? And by the way, since we're still talking about Ukraine right now too, Ukraine carried out an attack. They bombed an area, a key energy facility in Belgorod in Russia, and this strike has been considered one of the most precise blows to Russian infrastructure. Basically, it left them in the dark. According to reports, they also basically lost internet in this area, a total blackout in the region. And there were, in fact, intelligence evacuations because they knew this attack was coming.
Belgorod has been one of the areas, along with Kursk, where the Ukrainians have achieved the most. To put, let's say, at risk. Let's say Yarkov is a city that has been at risk precisely because Belgorod is where they fire from. So from here, they shoot towards this area. And well, what Ukraine has decided for some time now is to try to move the line forward, right? That's why when they enter Kursk, which by the way, this guy, what's his name, Vladimir Putin, received an intelligence report. And that was public, in which there was a plan from Ukraine to enter this area, right? Or was the idea to enter Kursk? And when they give him this information, well, and Pumano detained, there were a series of things they were reporting that there were. Sorry, it's just that it went away here, the image. It was an intelligence report which warned them that there was a risk of entering Ukraine, that they were going to start taking Kursk. Did it make them laugh? In the Kremlin, they said this is impossible. It's not going to happen. They didn't reinforce the area, and suddenly, well, they already had them inside. And not only that, but Russians were involved there. And that's something that also wasn't talked about much at the time. But there was a group involved there that operates inside Russia, that is Russian by birth, and they want Putin out. So that was also the part that caught attention at the time and within this tug-of-war that happened in Kursk. Another thing that isn't talked about much is that from that point on, there were several changes within the military. They had to focus, well, on the border. It took them months to get the Ukrainians out of that area, and now it went from Kursk to operating toward Belgorod. Two areas that are key to being able to attack Kharkiv and Kharkiv. Well, it's this, let's say, this territory, this area. Well, up until now, they haven't been able to get in. The Russians haven't been able to access that area they tried to, or that we'll surely see them keep trying. I don't know. And well, let's move on to other topics. Let's go to other important matters as well. The Einstein case is separate. It's not being discussed anymore, right? But it's still ongoing. What about today? And did any information come out from this Republican?
Thomas Macy?
Thomas Macy is not here.
Really into that topic.
He doesn't care about whether they're going or about the 13 Atlas or about UFOs or even Bigfoot. He doesn't care about anything or what's happening around him and says, I don't forget that we have to keep following the case. And he's a Republican, but he's a Republican who wants people to know what's going on. And well, some pretty interesting information comes up. What's going on? What are people saying about this topic? What have they been commenting on? Well,
the other day we were telling you that Thomas Macy was saying that basically the Department of Justice hasn't given any information, that they're just making excuses not to release the information. And well, both Thomas Macy and Rockman, who I think is a Democrat, represented this. They just told the federal court that the Department of Justice can't be trusted, so what does it have? I mean, they can't trust them to publish it, really, because they censor the names of the perpetrators. That's tough.
There's no separation of powers. And the other day, and I'll go back to what Giras was saying the other day on his channel, let's see. It's not just a dictatorship when they don't vote for you. It's clearly a dictatorship even when they did vote for you. But you start controlling the other branches, you start controlling the media, you start controlling Congress, you start controlling the judiciary. Hey, wait, that's what democracy is about, separation of powers. Then autocratic reactions start to happen, and that's when things can get more complicated. Why? Because the Republicans said, look, today they voted and said that's it, officially. The United States cannot operate against a country abroad. If they don't notify Congress, they must. But it's because of drug trafficking, it doesn't matter. If it's about who knows what else, it doesn't matter. There have to be two.
Twice in these 2 days, the Republicans have literally turned their backs on the laws or the trend. The idea that Trump brings.
Trump's view on current procedures. In this case, he is asking a judge to appoint an independent monitor who is trustworthy. To force disclosure, he says to force disclosure by citing missing documents, improper redactions, statements from the Department of Justice that simply don't add up. So, you know that this department can't be trusted, as this Republican said, and we have to put someone else in charge. A judge will decide that. Let's see what this judge says. But the Einstein case it's not only not finished, but what's coming could be tremendously interesting. Because it's not thousands of documents anymore, they're talking about millions of documents.
Millions? So I think there are 5 million left.
Remember that this case isn't like every time something happened to a young girl. No.
She's not 20 years old?
2 decades, no. Abuses. Think about all the information there. Plus this man documented everything, and it wasn't just Einstein. 10 people led that.
Where
are those 10 people? Who is more? No, but the case of is huge.
It's huge. It's a network.
It's a network. It's a network. It's a network.
It's a network apart from spies. I mean, it involves intelligence in different countries.
It involves a lot of money. It involves philosophers. It involves people from the right, people from the left, scientists. It involves all kinds of ideologies. A lot of people are involved in it, so that's the case. That's why it's convenient for many people not to talk about the subject, right? That's the situation. Let's discuss another important topic. Today, Mike Johnson rejects. Mike Johnson is the one in charge, yes, of the House of Representatives. I mean, he's a Republican and he's the Speaker of the House of Representatives. He's a person very close to Trump. But this time, Mike Johnson is telling the United States. He tells the president that military intervention in Greenland cannot happen, period. And he does support intervention in Venezuela. I mean, he says Venezuela. What was done was right from the point of view of the Speaker of the House of Representatives, not the head, let's say, of the Republican Congress. But Mike Johnson says, no, you can't touch Greenland, not even with the petal of a rose. I mean, you can't go after Greenland. And that's what he says. Well, Congress basically because the Democrats have been against it. But we still needed to see what the Republicans would say. And well, the Republicans are saying it can't be done. So it's very interesting because today Trump is, they say, at a crossroads, well, about what will happen with either Greenland or NATO.
She said exactly this today in an interview. Lately, she has been dropping bombshells in 2-hour interviews she gave to the New York Times, where the president,
A quick side note, she only gives interviews to the New York Times and no one else. She hardly wants to give them interviews because, it's like, no, not really, like they're not the ones. And well, she gives them an interview.
And well, in this interview, he says that the United States might have to choose between taking control of Greenland. We have to remember that they have bases there.
They already have bases, yes.
Or keeping NATO. And this obviously has caused a lot of concern. And he says, Trump reiterated his interest in having the United States take over Greenland, an autonomous territory of Denmark, arguing that ownership gives you things you can't get by signing documents. I mean, it's not just about the basis, it's something more, the minerals, something he sees there that he needs, or maybe he just got stubborn. Containing him could be the same.
It could be many things, but I mean, it seems like a big waste of territory to him. Look, for safety, for those who say it's for safety, well, just get that idea out of your head. It's simply for one reason. The bases are already there, and Denmark's first response was, do you want more bases? Go ahead, put them in. They have no problem. Put as many bases as you want. There's no issue, right? I mean, you want to put intercontinental missiles, put the missiles, put whatever you want. There's no issue, right? That's not the problematic issue. The problematic one is, well, the resources. At the end of the day, at this point, the concern isn't just for Denmark specifically, it's for all of Europe. They're there, well, nervous. The United Kingdom, Germany itself, France, they're saying, hey, we need to strengthen ourselves and become independent from NATO, in the sense that it always had been. Donald Trump complains, saying, oh, they've left everything to me. The biggest burden, and he's right about that, I mean, the biggest burden has been on the United States. The one who puts in the most, the one who invests the most, hey.
But also the one who has the most power.
Exactly, he's the one who's the leader. He's still the leader because he consistently contributes the most. But the point is that he's gonna lose. I mean, okay, you make the Greenland move. You lose, they've already won him. All your European bases are gone. And you also lose NATO. Hey, I don't need it since I supported it, right? Now Europe will get stronger and independent from you, so you no longer have power over them. It might take 5 or 10 years, but eventually Europe will be independent and act as a libero, yes or no, like in soccer. I mean, you know, right now it's not in my best interest to play with you anymore because you're not aligned with my interests. Now, if Europe wants to align with the interests of China or Russia or whoever it wants, then Europe will decide to move. And now you have a bunch of countries and a bunch of economies against you. And on top of that, they're more powerful. I mean, you made them more powerful. They took their time, they got scared, but in the end, well, here we are now. You lose more than you gain. I mean, you've invested more, but you have more power. So, well, maybe, I mean, their plan works out for them momentarily, but in the long run, I feel like that's a risk for their own interests. I mean, but anyway, what else?
Another thing that was a huge red flag, he says he doesn't need international law. He says he can be guided by his own morality. I mean, if it were, I don't know, someone enlightened like that, well, that's fine, but we're talking about Donald Trump, right?
But anyway, even if he were enlightened, if we started to accept that rulers are guided by their own morality, okay, sometimes it works for you and you say, hey, look, I agree with him because I think the same way, but later on someone comes along that you don't agree with or who doesn't have the same morals, whatever it may be and whoever it may be. If we get used to things being run that way, it will lead to chaos later and we won't like it. The thing here is, well, what the German president said about that order being broken, it has been broken. You might say, that's great since I didn't like that order. The thing is, what's being proposed here isn't a return. I mean, it's not like there was an evolution, but rather what's being proposed is actually a regression. In the end, it's basically going back to those times when there were just a couple, 2 or 3 powers that controlled everything. And the rest, well, they just pick up the crumbs, take whatever is left over, and that's it. And that's a world that right now, I don't believe we want anymore, right? I mean, we never wanted it, and even less so now, right? We don't want a world where just a couple of countries decide everything. And the closer we get to that, to having just a few decide, it's a very risky situation. We may agree or disagree with country 10, but I don't think that would be good for the future of humanity in general, right? Now let's move on to other points, to other interesting matters as well about what's happening with that topic. But this topic about NATO and Greenland, they have made it very clear to him, even those closest to him, don't get involved with that topic. I mean, when Congress didn't assign it to him, he's saying it wouldn't just be about NATO or Greenland anymore. It would be about democracy or Greenland, because democracy would have to end in order to be above Congress and act over Congress. So it would be... No, it's not just NATO or Greenland. It's about choosing democracy, your entire economy. Because what country would want to trust you if you're taking territory away from your partner? I mean, you destroy the economy, you destroy your partners, and you destroy democracy because you would have to bypass Congress. Has Congress already said they oppose that move?
Exactly. Basically, one of the most important things for a country to grow and prosper is to have neighbors you get along with. Because if not, how are you going to live? How will you prosper or grow if you're always anxious about your neighbors?
If trust is broken, because you tend to always distrust the more hegemonic countries, the more leading countries, so to speak. Imagine a movement like that. It would be, let's say, unusual and tremendous. Well, unusual for our times, right? That's already happened and passed. Let's move on to other important matters. Today, just a quick report on what's happening in Iran because it's reported that the internet still hasn't come back. It was said that it had gone down for 45 minutes, but no, the internet has collapsed. The internet hasn't come back in Iran, but this problem goes beyond that. It's also being reported that cell phone lines are failing.
And basically, there are no cell phones. According to reports, there is a nationwide blackout, and the regime has even cut the phone lines. Only the small number of people who have managed to get access to Starlink, and even then, the Starlink signals have been interfered with and their speed has dropped to dial-up levels. Do you remember when you used to connect through the phone and it was so slow? And some people say that even with a VPN, they're still struggling. Even home internet has gone down. And well, they've completely shut off the flow of information. So yes, Starlink is slow. And well, they're already discussing a case in Farsi, if that's the name in Farsi.
Just a heads up, there's one clarification. This image, this specific one is from Belgorod.
That's the one.
The one from Belgorod. When Ukraine attacked Belgorod, the power went out, the internet went down, everything went down. We'll show the outage image in a moment. It's from Iran's internet, right? That too.
Well, it's already being reported. For example, one of the people who has Starlink already uploaded the image, which we won't share, the one we just mentioned, at the time of Fadi, where allegedly some police officers in a Toyota had opened fire directly at people.
I mean, this is the reception issue. It's still there. No, it hasn't changed. And honestly, well, like I said, I don't see, at least right now, I don't see any sign of trauma in that sense. No, I mean, it's more like, well, the psychological pressure, so to speak, against that regime. And what I do see is that it's already been 12 days. Well, it's about to be the 13th day.
It's already the 13th, yes.
Well, they're already on the 13th. So, not counting the first labor protest that happened before this. This was like the last straw, but it kept escalating to the levels we're seeing right now. Unlike other protests before, we saw that the repression was more massive and bigger. Now, the repression started to appear later, and also police officers and even some soldiers quickly started to side with the protests. That catches my attention too. That's one difference we've noticed, but let's move on to another important topic. Notice what's happening around the world? Kim Jong-un's current position stands out, especially regarding his closeness with Russia. No, basically, he's just letting everyone know who's the boss now, because before, people always said Kim Jong-un's boss was Xi Jinping. So, is it China then? I mean, let's say that's how it was. It was basically like, in the end, when it was known that China wanted something, they would send North Korea to put on some pressure, basically. And with that, China would say, no, I'll calm them down. Don't worry about North Korea. I've got it under control. But now, according to what North Korea itself is saying, the new boss isn't Xi anymore. Now it's Putin. Kim Jong-un has sent a message to the North Korean leader saying that he will support all the decisions made by the Kremlin. Even in any conflict with Ukraine or anyone else, Kim Jong-un says he will support them. Basically, whatever Putin says, he will be willing to do it. It's a letter he sent to Vladimir Putin, published on January 9th by the Korean Central News Agency. The North Korean leader promised to unconditionally support all the policies and decisions of the Russian president, says Kim. I will always respect and fully support your policies and decisions, and I am ready to stand by your side for you and for Russia. So that's how Kim Jong-un put it today.
Exactly. Trump is going to be really jealous right now because he hasn't received his letter. Hello? Kim described his relationship with Putin as the most valuable and expressed pride in his friendship with the Kremlin leader, making it clear that his loyalty is no longer just strategic, but now it's on a, well, personal level. And the letter was sent in response to a congratulation from Putin, apparently because of Kim Jong-un's birthday. We have to remember that it's in January. He's also a Capricorn. Capricorn. It's a January birthday. Yes, apparently, because you know everything, there is a mystery.
Several people here are also Capricorns.
So, well, now you know who you share your birthday with. There's always one spoiled one, like they say, a bad apple.
Let's just say that Capricorns tend to be intense leaders.
But
suddenly someone leaves
for autocracy.
Let's say no longer to being. But well,
it's just that here there was no other choice. I mean, basically, he was born this way. He was born like this. So what is he supposed to do? What can he do?
He was born being, imagine his grandfather, his father. Yeah, it's tough, but well, that's how things are, unfortunately. Well, the situation for the North Koreans themselves, well, they're going to keep going. They're going to be born, and they're going to be told that their only supreme leader is this person. No, like an Ayatollah, but in a Korean version, no. Where they pay homage to him every day, and well, they keep that regime in a tremendous state of isolation. Now, that's a separate point, and moving on to other matters which are also important. Reports say Border Patrol was involved in a shooting moments ago. Serious incidents continue to occur. A shooting in Portland which involved federal agents. The FBI confirmed that agents from the Vans and Border Patrol were involved in a shooting in Oregon around 2:15 p.m. today. According to reports today, Thursday, January 8, 2016, a woman and a man were found with gunshot wounds near Northeast at 146th Avenue and East Burnside. Both were taken to the hospital, but their condition is still unconfirmed. By now, it may have been clarified if they're okay. However, the Federal Bureau of Investigation took full control of the case, saying the investigation is ongoing. The original post was deleted shortly after being uploaded by the Bureau, but it is known that this situation is happening. The local police department arrived at the scene minutes later, but clarified that their officers were not involved. Apart from that, there was a shooting. Portland Police Chief Bob Day urged calm in the community following the intense emotions stirred by the incident, particularly after events in Minneapolis. This situation is obviously escalating, in addition to the current protests against immigration and customs enforcement and customs and border protection as well. Just as what happened with immigration and customs enforcement was very extreme, opposing groups are also emerging, also very extreme, who are also calling for violence. So hopefully things will calm down because this whole situation is really out of control.
For example, what would be the logical thing to do after what happened there? The logical thing would be that immigration and customs enforcement agents wouldn't go out today, but they did. In fact, they went to a high school, to a secondary prep school. Not what would happen here in Mexico, for example, and they brought those tear gas sprays. They put handcuffs on parents and teachers. You ask, how can you do that a day after what happened?
J.D. Vance denies it, insisting no, and wants to be even tougher. I don't know what else. You might ask, aren't you seeing what's happening? But they live off polarization, they like polarization, and that's what they're looking for, to radicalize the situation even more, and that's a worrying issue. This person, the one who fired, a guy named Jonathan Rose, now we know the identity of this immigration and customs enforcement agent, apparently covered his face immediately after he fired. If you know you did the right thing, you wouldn't cover your face, you wouldn't hide your face. But obviously he covered his face because he knew he wasn't doing the right thing when he shot this 37-year-old woman who wasn't even armed or anything. Him, supposedly a week before, someone had already tried to run him over with a car, and they say he was still traumatized by that situation. And well, with that too, I imagine they're trying to justify this person who, well, right now has also been... There have been many polarizing comments, but instead of the United States, specifically Donald Trump and Vance, trying to calm things down, they haven't. And we're all one country, let's get along, let's keep things calm, but instead they come out and make the situation even more polarized, and you wonder, what's this all about? They want to polarize things outside, they want to polarize things inside. Honestly, it's just unbelievable.
Yeah. No, they're not creating any unity. And, well, the bad thing is that from now on, this person's name is known and they're definitely in danger, right? It's already being shared in various places like their home or with family. All of that is at risk now, especially with such polarization making it easy for someone unstable to attack.
Yes, that's the point, that extremist characters also come out, and well, it's really intense. It's like a never-ending story. But anyway, let's move on to other important matters. Just a quick comment before we go to the three and back, because it's really interesting. Today, South Africa announced that it will be conducting naval military exercises with China and Iran. South Africa is increasingly aligning itself with the Russia-China bloc, leaning more and more toward that bloc, and that's also noteworthy. Today, another thing that stands out is, well, this announcement made by France and Russia about a prisoner exchange also stands out. They were there for a while. Negotiations have gone on for weeks. There's mention of intense talks between Macron and Putin or their teams to enable an exchange. No.
Exactly. Another interesting point today is this shaman from when, don't you remember, January 6th, 2020, 2021, 2021? One of those who entered Congress and was wearing horns, well, he just announced that he plans to run for governor of Arizona. And just one more thing about him, despite his craziness, he has withdrawn his support from Donald Trump. Doesn't that catch your attention?
It grabs your attention, doesn't it? The famous shaman, as they say.
The shaman, as the man with the horns is called.
Yes, he was with the good ones there. Well, let's move on to other matters. Let's talk about the issue with the 13 on the back, which is also really crazy. That's it. Check this out. More amazing 13 Atlas images have been revealed. And well, in this post they made today in the afternoon, actually it was posted pretty late. They show these impressive images of the jets from the 13 Atlas. Let's try to make this image smaller since it currently comes with a weird crop, right? But anyway, that's what is known. That's what they've said about this 13 Atlas topic and what Abeloue himself published today, saying that this situation has been unusual according to his report. It's a comment that stands out because it's already been quite unusual. This comet or this object, whatever it is. According to what the astrophysicist himself reports, it shows that the structure of the 13 Atlas from images received by Hubble on January 7 is already an update to what we've seen before. He claims that it shows an extraordinary structure in the interstellar object, a collimated jet that points directly toward the sun, which is the opposite of what you would expect in any ordinary comet. Especially look, because this is important, because the comet or the object, whatever it is, it has been shooting the jet directly toward the sun for months. What is expected and what has been seen in others? There have been very few comets that have shot the jet toward the sun because it's rare. Those who've been on the channel for a while and seen our video playlist about this, the sun has solar winds. So what the solar wind does is very powerful, and the solar wind ends up destroying any jet that comes from a comet. Yes, there have been, but when they have happened, they've been very quick, very fleeting. In a few hours or a few days, that jet ends because it can't withstand the strength of the solar wind. In this case, we're already talking about months where the jet, besides, not only does it point toward the sun, but as it moves through the solar system, it's changing the direction of the jet to keep pointing toward the sun. Something that's even more extraordinary is that the comet or the jet they show is enormous. It's gigantic. So it's a lot of material that's coming out with force. And on top of that, it's not dispersing. I mean, you would think the jet should move forward and then disappear, but that's not happening. The image processed by the Larsen rotational filter, which Nina worked on, revealed a triple jet structure. The most prominent one is the antitail, which extends toward the sun on a scale of about 400,000 kilometers, which he says is not an optical effect, but with the images that have been taken for weeks, it has been possible to confirm that the phenomenon is real. Some astrophysicists still doubted, insisting such a thing shouldn't or couldn't exist. It's not possible, so it must be an optical effect. That was some astrophysicist's argument. The thing is, this was impossible and just an optical phenomenon, not an effect of distance or anything like that. So, the only way to confirm it is to see it from different angles over time, meaning with weeks and months of observation. Then you can know that, well, yes, it's real. And that's what they've concluded today. The jet, he says, can't be explained by traditional mechanisms that originate with comets. For example, what about the pressure from the solar wind? What about solar radiation? Instead of being dragged, the jet seems to resist and move forward against that pressure. Change the angle based on the comet or object's movement. This phenomenon has been detected since July 21, 2025, but the January image confirms that this is the most important thing. All this comment I want to make is that the anomaly persists, and so since one persists, it confirms that first, the anomaly exists. In other words, the jet is there and hasn't changed. It's observable from multiple angles even after perihelion. That's what makes all this even more extravagant and exotic, right? What is perihelion? For those who haven't been connected here to the channel, it's the closest point to the sun. From that point on, they said this is going to go down. I mean, the jet toward the sun has to start decreasing. What has happened? What hasn't happened about the perihelion? The comet is still pointing toward the sun with that anti-tail, and on top of that with a lot of force. Another detail is what he calls the rotation axis of Tres Seatlas, which points toward the sun with a deviation of only 7 degrees. He claims this is an extremely precise alignment and statistically almost at the level of impossible. Look, check out the statistics of the calculation they make. The probability of these things being combined, the precise alignment with the sun at that level, he says, would be 1 in 10,000 despite those geometric and physical anomalies. He claims that National Aeronautics and Space Administration has not mentioned any details so far. In his last conference, which was, by the way, in November, there haven't been any National Aeronautics and Space Administration conferences on the subject since then. What the question they asked the CIA reports, curiously, did someone think to ask the CIA, hey, do you have any information about the Tres Seatlas topic? And what they said is, we can neither confirm nor deny information on this topic, but they were compelled by the Freedom of Information Act. I mean, it wasn't a superficial question, it was an obligation for them to respond if they know something, and just only one thing. Legally, they can't give an answer, which is about whether the topic they're going to talk about has issues with the national security of the United States. It's the only way, since legally they'd have to respond. And what if it's discovered later? It's just that you didn't have any information because you just said you didn't have any information, and that way you got rid of the problem. The only reason is that they see something there that creates a risk. I mean, maybe it could be. For example, Dr. Abelweb himself said maybe. They said, you know what? What do we see? It's so strange that people might get scared, they might panic, and that's why they say it's a matter of national security. I mean, it doesn't have to necessarily be a threat or anything, it's just a risk, maybe in people's psychological reaction. That's why they can consider that possibility. But anyway, the thing here is that because of the anomalous data, as Abelweb himself says, they can't be ignored. And that way, it becomes clear that there's an intellectual arrogance among some scientists here who want everything to fit perfectly. And if it doesn't fit within their views, then either it's not real, or they just stay quiet, or they start attacking. No, because if people don't understand something, what do? When they don't understand something, do they start attacking? No, that's typical. That's the usual trolling, right? I mean, they don't understand something and they start attacking, especially without any reasoning, right? I mean, they've been attacking the web a lot. They've been criticizing it a lot, but they say, well, beyond the personal attacks, why don't you give me arguments? Right?
And can you explain?
Why are you telling me all this, right? And then, well, we get into a discussion about values, I mean statistical values, and the values they're reporting. You mean Hubble, not Soho, right? What's coming in March will be interesting because of how close it is. Now, well, to a Persephone, I think that's what it's called, the moon, that will be getting closer to the comet, which is also there. Well, super interesting. But anyway, let's move on quickly just to a very interesting matter of a warning. And that's when they talk about artificial intelligence risks. Is it because of this topic? What's happening there?
Very good. Scientists have revealed that intelligence models are capable of generating functional viruses from scratch and rewriting toxins, for example, to evade genetic filters. This obviously has raised concerns among those involved in uncontrolled biotechnology. I mean, some country or extremist group could end up using that kind of thing here.
Just to clarify, it's not regenerative AI like generative pre-trained transformer and similar technologies. No, I mean, they're not referring to that kind of artificial intelligence. They're talking about the kind of artificial intelligence that's used in medicine. Yes, just like it can get you information on how to make a certain medication or any other situation as well. That same ability to be used for evil can create what they call the perfect weapon.
Exactly. A team led by Microsoft showed that AI could modify known toxins to create new versions that would go unnoticed by the genetic security filters used in DNA synthesis companies. And while this has caused a lot of anxiety, AI systems work as genomic language models capable of predicting and suggesting plausible DNA sequences, designing genomes that appear natural yet are entirely unique and specific.
Watch out for that, just imagine.
And artificial viruses are also a risk because, in addition, their behavior can't be easily predicted. This, for example, creates challenges for global biosecurity.
And this is within reach of many countries. It's within reach of many laboratories. This isn't or doesn't have anything to do with generative AIs, but it does have to do with a certain level of intelligence, already at another level, more advanced, more scientific. But it also lets you imagine these bad hands. Yes.
And there are plenty of crazy people?
And there are plenty of people who are just like that. So, well, it's a warning that it's not the first time we've heard it, but today this study is being talked about again, which, by the way, is a study that has already been published and is also being analyzed by different companies, scientists, and so on, to determine how to avoid those risks, since it's just starting, but consider 2, 3, 4, or 5 years ahead. That kind of AI technology, well, could still become even more accessible to more countries, to more governments, to more radical groups. There. Well, check out the series, not the movie, actually. The 12 Monkeys series, not the movie. Why?
And also, the documentary about Christ is really good because you realize how everything is increasingly in the hands of the people. You no longer have to be a university scientist to access those tools. Anyone can get them easily.
The whole Christ thing is amazing, done in a garage with very little investment. I mean,
you can experiment with dogs and now some even glow at night.
Yes. And there are people who are doing it and even posting it on YouTube and, well, on social media. Let's go to the comments then. Some information also about what's happening with Venezuela. How are things going? Today, there was talk about the release of several political prisoners.
Exactly today, the brother of the acting president, as they call her, came out to announce that they were going to start releasing prisoners. A pause because there was an event with a Cuban diplomat, and at that moment, a pause. The regime also didn't like that there were journalists, that there were people recording outside the helicoid, and they basically stopped the release of the political prisoners.
But even though that's the demonstration and confirmation for everyone who went out there to defend the indefensible about Maduro's regime, right? I mean, there are the political prisoners, and some of them are in emaciated conditions.
Exactly. That's also why they don't want to release them exactly. And right now, they're also calling the families of the political prisoners from Helicoide to hand them over directly at a designated place. To also avoid handing them over at the main entrance so that no one records them, no one takes pictures. They are coming out in intervals of about 5 to 10 at Helicoid and are transported in a truck where they are taken to certain locations. No, I mean, the only way is to follow them to see where they're being taken. But literally right now, a journalist was saying that he was doing a live stream on Facebook or something like that and is following him. He put something to his neck and said, "Cut it or I'll kill you." They're really aggressive, right?
Or, well, if he thought it was going to end. The repression isn't ending, but they're releasing these prisoners because there's pressure from the United States right now. Because if not, obviously they'd still be there indefinitely. Yeah, and this one? But well, hopefully they really will be released as promised, but I insist the repression is still there, it continues. Unfortunately, what people are telling us from Venezuela is really tough. People have been sending us reports about this situation, they've been telling us how. They also keep seeing these movements of the heavily armed groups doing whatever they want. It's a serious situation right now and it doesn't seem to be calming down, unfortunately. The whole situation is stirred up, you could say, and it's still going on. I also see that there's nervousness from the regime because they know that at some point people might rise up if they see weakness in the regime. That's why they want to show strength, because they want to feel or have some control over the population, but I think the people are already really fed up.
Yes, of course. The bad thing is that if they pay too much attention to you, they're afraid of me.
Obviously, right? Especially after all they've been through and everything happening. And also, well, they know they're there. Someone from Venezuela told me it's just that they left the worst ones anyway. I mean, they're still there.
There they are. The release of another major political prisoner, the well-known lawyer Alejandro Rebolla, has just been confirmed.
Yes, it's a lot. They are well-known figures due to their activism or ties to the opposition. Either because suddenly some contradicted the regime and ended up on the same side. I mean, it's crazy.
47 minutes ago, no one knew anything yet, sorry, about Juan Pablo Guanipa. Do you also remember an arrival with Maria Corina? There was no information 45 minutes ago. He may have been released, but nothing is known yet. Also, in Donald Trump's recent Fox interview, he also said that in a week he's going to see Maria Corina.
He'll see Maria Corina in a week. That's it.
He praised her as very intelligent, but you know him. He'll compliment you one day and criticize you the next. So, well...
Exactly. Here is what I was telling you about the internet guy from Iran. This is also how he has been presenting himself. Well, this interview you're talking about did take a turn in that sense because he had been critical of Corina, right? He claimed she doesn't support the people, and when asked about Maria Corina, who received votes, he just said she and her team, obviously the world. Gonzalez had about 70% of the vote, not anymore. Yes, that's right, already.
Already? When? You need to ask her specific questions with exact numbers or she'll deflect. She just said in this interview that attacks on the ground in Mexico were about to begin. I don't know if she's saying it because of the heat of the interview or if she really sees it.
Yes, there will likely be reactions, and we'll hear about that tomorrow.
In by water, and we're going to start now hitting land with regard to the cartels. The cartels are running. Mexico, it's very, very sad to watch and see what's happened to that country, but...
He claims that the cartels are basically governing Mexico. The President of the United States said he will carry out ground attacks against the cartels, according to that report. And that's also, well, obviously one of those things he says. I think it's in the heat of the interview. And then tomorrow, then the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, explains it. But obviously there will be reactions to this from the Mexican government, surely. But anyway, let's go to the comments. Come on, let's go. Like the state, greetings to the whole community. Let's immediately greet Marcos. How have you been? How have you been? A big greeting to Baldo. How have you been? Hello, Benedicto. What's up? How have you been? Hello. Greetings to Benedicto and Edgardo. How have you been? Thanks for your comment. Jose Mendez, thanks for not mentioning the 13th. You brought it for the end of the world, and I get scared thinking of selling everything I own. No, you should never be afraid. Greetings, Jose Mendez. And well, in the end, sometimes the news is tough, but nothing happens.
Says Benedicto. And Mexico, he said, and not Mexico made our classic sound, he says.
This is crazy. It looks like fights on Earth and between stars, he says. How is Aurelio? How was Aurelio? Garcia, thanks for the comment. Greetings to Yo-Yo and Edgardo. I've lost track of everything.
Come back. Remember that here we always keep the exact information. Greetings to Eric Marino. And too many things have happened, and it's only been 8 days of the year exactly.
8 days.
And more will come. I
Thought we were in March and already...
It already feels like March.
It's crazy. Greetings, he says. Experts discussed how the year will unfold and related topics, both from the point of view of what is observed geopolitically and also what is observed scientifically. They say it's going to be a very fast-paced year. Well, yes, it's going to be a very fast-paced year.
That's what they say.
Hi, Mercedes. How are you? Very good. Thank you so much for being here with us and for being a member of the Chaburuco channel. Also a member of the channel. To all the members, thank you so much for supporting us. They say greetings, Pepe and Astrid. Here watching the new episode of Fado. It's already available to watch later.
Says Micah Gonzalez. Where's the Electoral Tribunal one? You need to say what happened and what you mean, Micah.
From the Electoral Tribunal, Milka.
Sorry.
I imagine that, or I don't know if you're referring to the situation in Venezuela or what's happening in Honduras, which, by the way, we didn't even get a chance to talk about in Honduras. But the crisis is also really tough because, once again, this idea comes up of wanting to annul the elections because it didn't work out for the president of Honduras. That also stands out. Regards.
Regards from Selva in Venezuela. Mauro is number 3 and Atlas is the universe's messenger. Greetings, Jerez. Don't worry, January will only last 139 days. Enough already, please. Yes, it's good that they're better. Currently, my eye allergies are really bad. Have you experienced this? Yes, it started for me too, but I'm managing. Greetings to Pixel Cat as well, and also to Damian Gonzalez. Thank you, Pepe, for keeping us informed. Greetings. See you later. Damian?
Greetings. How have you been, Damien? Awesome. Thank you so much for commenting. And yes, I do see your comments too when you write them outside of the live stream. So thank you very much. Big greetings, Pixel. How have you been? Greetings. Do you feel it already, gentlemen? Greetings. How have you been, Pixel?
Greetings.
Beto, how have you been? I see you're checking in. I've caught your replays for various reasons, but it's great to have you here live now. Thanks so much. I appreciate you joining us. We're also uploading recorded reports because sometimes there's not enough time to bring everything and summarize it all. Sometimes we make reports, record them, and upload them, so please stay tuned.
Says Heris. There are a lot of people, he says. A lot are coming out, a lot have left. Just a moment ago, several tinted vehicles left from the helicoid. It's estimated that they will either be moved to another center or released somewhere else. Yes, there's still a lot of speculation. I mean, there are a lot of theories. One is that the thing about the families is real. Someone said they were called, agreed on a meeting spot, and will be left there. Another theory is some will go to hospitals. It's really bad. Yeah, who knows? Some think they'll be moved to another prison. And Alex says that we have to listen to the other side. There are a lot of people inside Venezuela who support Chavismo. Yes, 30% Alex, but 70% oppose it.
Yes, Alex, it's like saying, well, we have to listen. I mean, during the Nazi era, it's not like we had to listen to the Nazis. Well, hey, right? I mean, obviously there are groups that were favored by the regime, many out of fear, many because they were forced. There are many reasons, but obviously there are things that just can't be accepted. Alex G. And honestly, I'm surprised, by some of the comments. You can't accept repression from any government, even if they have support from whoever, you can't accept repression from any government. And what if later Maria Corina's government or anyone else's commits repression or does something wrong? That should also be documented and criticized. I mean, it's not a matter of popularity. It's not about listening to both sides. It's not about seeing what's happening. If it's right, if it's not right from a minimally human point of view, right? That's all. I mean, outside of that issue. Hey, if some people don't like Maria Karina and prefer someone else, that's fine. You have to listen to them, that's true. You have to listen, but what you can't defend are authoritarian regimes that shouldn't exist. Period. That's it. It's simple. Well, and we've been very critical here. For example, with all the nonsense and terrible things done by Trump and Netanyahu themselves. But that doesn't mean we should say, are Hezbollah members saints? No, but they're not terrorists, and neither are Hamas and similar groups. I mean, that's the part that suddenly becomes problematic. Beyond that, the human side of today. If these people want to make a comment because they don't think the United States is perfect, let them say it. Let them comment. That's a point that's totally acceptable. But what can't be accepted is defending regimes of that kind. That's a situation that honestly is basically defending criminals, and that's the issue here. But anyway, greetings, Alex, he says. I've never said anything about the regime. No, I know. I know that's not the case. No, I didn't say that either. I didn't say you said that. But the point is...
Greetings to Vicky. I hadn't been able to join the live because of 1,000 things and one thing, but I already read it. But yes.
Greetings. How have you been in Cuba? For saying that, he says. Greetings, Miguel, he says. I imagine there's more above the comment.
Luis Miguel.
Greetings, very good, says Lilia. Don't repeat slanders from the Empire without checking first, he says. Well, no, nobody repeats any slander from any empire, right? He says greetings from Panama and asks how you've been. He says he's very good. 20 years of suffering isn't right, he says, but 26 years, that's really not right. Exactly.
If you see that the vast majority of the population of Venezuela is outside of Venezuela, well, it's for a reason.
If it's because I interpreted that wrong, or if not, well, that's how it is, so I apologize, obviously. No, I have nothing against your comments, but yes, what I do find myself against. That is to say, we have to give a voice to those from the regime. And by the way, here we show what the regime says. Usually the nonsense that those from the regime say, which is the point we're discussing here, right? I mean, what we're talking about isn't about the population on one side or the other, nor about the divisions that may or may not exist in Venezuela or the differences that may exist in Latin America, but about the regimes that have done a lot of harm in this country, in that case, and that have done a lot of harm, not just there. They've harmed Mexico, they've harmed Cuba, they've harmed a lot of countries. Well, also through those so-called popular leaders or apparently popular leaders, they do as they please and undo things, right? That's the critical part. Just like there should be criticism toward any government, democratic or not, criticism has to be made. And that's the part that I feel we're experiencing right now. A moment on social media, a moment when you basically have to focus on being the propagandist for one side or the propagandist for the other. And I refuse to do that for views. Channels will do almost anything, and in that sense, it surprises me. Look, check it out for yourselves, and you'll see the channel that only does propaganda in favor of a certain topic. They just applaud everything Tanya or Trump does or criticize everything they do, and that's it. Everything is wrong or everything is right, but there isn't that, let's say, well, that analysis, that debate that needs to happen. Beyond whether everything is right or everything is wrong, we have to be critical of everything and whatever is right. Even if it's the weirdest character, well, we also have to talk about it.
The comment about the population in Mexico. Immigrants all over the world represent between 8 to 10%, but those are distributed all over the world. If we look at those in the United States, it's clearly a much smaller percentage, but the main destination for Mexicans is the United States. Did they used to go or still do? Now many are returning.
It's been a long time since they have.
25%?
Yes, no. Which stated that 25% is from Mexico.
Is in the United States.
Yes, no, stop, no, yes, no. And if it's an important percentage, no?
Obviously, the 10%, how many are there? They have better jobs like Fernando in Switzerland or those in Japan and Australia. Many are there for work, not because they're being sent to other countries.
They also don't study, don't work, whatever. But yes, but here they get into arguments.
I didn't understand because I commented that in Venezuela, most of the population is already outside or looking to leave.
Character, impressive number. And, well, I mean, these are migratory crises that I wouldn't even call migratory crises anymore. They're exoduses. Yes, they're exoduses. It's already an exodus when you have that kind of number. It's like what happened with Poland and with other countries. They had an exodus, and then later they had the opposite. People came back. Why? Well, because things get better. Hopefully things will improve enough in Venezuela so that people can say, hey, now I can go back to my homeland because, well, they miss it too, right? That's clear to me. People miss their hometowns.
Is it clear? Yes, and at some point?
In Mexico, especially at the border, you often see this. People just say bye and leave. That's how it is at the border. Many people hold dual citizenship, for example, being both American and Mexican. I mean, they already have the papers, let's say, but they live in Mexico, right? And a friend of mine went through that. He doesn't have citizenship, but he has a green card, right? Yeah, he had a green card and worked here in Mexico. He was like that for a long time. He worked here because he said, they pay me more in Mexico than in the United States. Later, he found a higher paying job in the United States. That's how it was. He's an engineer. And one time, well, he was crossing the bridge, and he was crossing the bridge with Mexican plates, and you can't cross with Mexican plates if you have a green card. There's a problem there. I don't know how it works. He had to be honest. He said, "Why are you coming?" "I'm coming from Mexico. I live there now." "Why?" "They pay me better." And he was kind of speechless. It threw him off. But well, it happens, right? I mean, that's also part of it. You know, there are many realities. What I'm trying to say is that it's not all black and white. It's just that there are many realities when it comes to migration, security, and so on. I mean, I feel like it's the moment we saw, at least in Reds and in people in general, it's like obsessions, right? Either everything is wrong with government 10 or everything is right, and there can't be any middle ground. It's hard to evolve like that. No, yeah.
Yeah, says Martin Pepe. The League of Nations lost its value, which is like the old United Nations, right? And that's how World War II started. If the United States leaves the United Nations, we'll return to the law of the jungle and risk World War III. Greetings, Martin.
Greetings, Martin. Look at what you're saying. It's really interesting. The ability, at least for many countries, to speak through the United Nations has been lost. The United Nations was also granted an intermediate power, the ability to communicate. But it doesn't have any other power either. I mean, what other power does it have in that sense? Well, nothing. I mean, today the United States leaves 33 United Nations agencies and another 30 or 28 international agencies as well. Yes, human rights. Why? Well, because with a character like Trump, he just wants things done his way. He doesn't want to be questioned about the moves he's going to make, because then an organization comes along and says, "Hey, well, this really catches my attention." And that's not because of Trump. That's a separate issue. I mean, that comes from other countries. They're not members of United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, for example. Why aren't they with United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund? Because just imagine, it's about children's rights. Being in United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, what do you observe, such as child violence? They also record and supply the data. Hey, look, in this state, let's say here in Yucatan, for example, or in Quintana Roo, I mention it because I once attended a meeting, a press conference where this happened. From there, I had to record this, what's his name, Banderas then? But I had to go to this meeting first because from there we were going to record a commercial specifically for United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund, where United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund hired us to record this commercial with this Spanish actor. And within that, they said, don't look at any of the data in Quintana Roo. Well, the parents hit the children. Let's say no, and that's violence. They're not hitting them. So what is done is an educational work with the parents where they bring them certain data. They say, look, it has been shown that psychologically there are several ways to discipline a child when they misbehave. And they understand it better than with hitting, right? A very basic, very simple explanation, but there's the explanation. That's the kind of thing that United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund does. So they were trying to measure whether violence against children had decreased or not, and so on, right? And because they also had very tough cases where there were parents who went too far and, well, had taken the lives of their children, right? I mean, they also had cases of extreme violence, right? And it happens, doesn't it? I mean, it happens in those kinds of situations. This happens in the United States as well. And sometimes parents go beyond spanking and take it too far. Yeah, and that topic doesn't want to be questioned in the United States. I mean, it's like, oh, it just happens. This situation... They don't want that situation seen internationally because they're embarrassed or something. And they're not part of United Nations International Children's Emergency Fund. This one stands out. No, yeah.
A lot, that topic, right? That they don't belong to something. And other countries seem so first world, right? Well, not even that first world. Because children's and adolescents' rights are more respected.
Speaking of the first world, what did this guy say? What's the name of the one who was governor? Jesse Ventura? No.
Yes, today, well, he really gave Immigration and Customs Enforcement and the United States government in general a hard time. He's a really impressive character, pretty crazy, right? Yes, he's a really crazy character, but right now he sounds reasonable compared to the whole United States government, says Jose Mendez. Is it true Boston is going to launch? Are they? Boston, are the Russians launching a missile? Oreshnik? No, that's not true. Jose, greetings. Beto Blue here. Like my namesake, I watch your replays often and always give a thumbs up. Thanks so much.
Thank you. Greetings. For example, see what the New York Post is publishing. That's among the recent publications, it says. He is the governor of Minnesota, a World Wrestling Federation legend when this wrestler, Jesse Ventura, shows pride in the anti-ACE protesters in Minneapolis. This is, well, he's a character who has been a Republican, who has always been, let's say, kind of conservative, not exactly from the Trump wing. But right now he's extremely upset with this whole situation. He looks very different now. Look, Jesse Ventura has really changed.
Since he's older now, well, yeah, he says it's fine, yeah?
Yeah.
It looks great, says Tavi. Let's get a Venezuelan's opinion. Let's see what he says. Nearly 8 million Venezuelans abroad support families back home. If we hadn't done it, Venezuela would have nothing left, he says. There are two sides. As a Venezuelan in the United States, he says, I got this. Trump is going to get Maduro out, but as a matter of patriotism, I will never defend the way the United States violated our sovereignty, he says. It would have been better if there had been a direct, precise missile attack. That's what happens. I mean, obviously it bothers you when another country gets involved in your country, right? But do you also understand the situation? It's not as easy as saying, oh, is it black or is it white, right?
And that's what I find pretty fair to hear here in the comments, in this case from Tavi, whom I send my regards to. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's not Saturn. Still, for when some people here in Mexico say, no, yes, let Mexico get involved and act against trafficking, etc., against drug traffickers. Yeah, but do you know how those operations work? In those operations, they don't just go after the traffickers, they also act indiscriminately. I mean, come on.
There you have a shield from the civilians.
It's not like the traffickers are over there and the population is over here. No, they mix and live among the whole population. Unfortunately, that's not the case. And so, obviously, you're putting civilians at risk. It's not a war against an army, but against people who dress, act, and move like civilians among the population. Hey, if we're going to handle it with intelligence, that's perfect, excellent. Using intelligence is great, but the issue is wanting to send in troops. That's obviously where, from what I've seen from other politicians from different parties, not just the ones currently in power, they've also been very much against this situation for a long time. You don't say, look, we control the situation. Yeah, maybe it hasn't been done correctly because the truth is the government is really infiltrated. That's just how it is. It's a reality. There's been infiltration in the government for a long time. I think it's appropriate for one country to put pressure on another. Like to say, hey, pay attention to the whole problem. Maybe that way things will get better. I think that pressure is logical. It's diplomatic. It can even be commercial because in the end, everyone looks out for their own interests. Yes, if Mexico also wants to make a change so this doesn't happen, then that would also have to happen. And that change isn't just about doing what Calderon tried to do at the time, attacking blindly, but it has to be done with a lot of intelligence. So far, based on what we've seen from this one, what's the name of the security guy? What was his name again? This one, here in Mexico.
That's how it has.
They've tried to do it and it happens, and this has been Harfush, that's right. Not just trying, he's been making moves that are known. United States intelligence is involved. Yes, it's happening the same way. Marco Rubio said a few weeks ago, there's no country in the world doing more than the United States and Mexico on the issue of trafficking. So, because, I mean, doesn't the reality we see here suddenly not match the reality that this Marco Rubio is talking about? Are you saying here in Ocaso to Marco Rubio that they're actually taking action compared to what's happening in Michoacan or Sinaloa? Or is it what Trump is saying today? He claims everything is fine on that side and that all is colluded. Here in Ocaso, everyone has their own version. And when people ask me, hey Pepe, is it really in Ocaso? I don't see it here. That's what I hear.
But if you ask someone in Michoacan, they're going to say yes?
They're going to say yes, right? That the situation is really bad. Or in Baja California, in some places, they've also told us that the situation is terrible.
Francisco Arce says it's true that they're going to evacuate the space station. Look, what's happening is that there's an astronaut who has a medical condition. The astronauts are there for about 6 to 8 months. Yes, they haven't said who the astronaut is or what medical condition they have, but there was going to be a spacewalk. They canceled it when they saw that the astronaut was having that problem, but they haven't said anything. Are they still deciding whether to bring them back to Earth or if they can stay on the space station? They do have medical supplies there, but that's it. Just the basics, the most basic things.
Imagine that. I mean, they really have to leave.
They're not thinking, they're considering that.
Alex asks if they'll talk with Jerez. He says, comment. My aunt, an American citizen, left her son in Mexico. When she returned to Tijuana, he was already 20 and she told him the truth. The immigration officer allowed the son, who had no visa, to enter. Yes, there are cases like that where suddenly, in the end, what happens is a reality that we also have to remember. In the report, it talks about the challenges. It doesn't talk about the anger, about the problems. But in the middle of all that, there are a lot of situations that are more human and maybe not so visible, right? But they're there too, aren't they? This one says,
Greetings to Elias. How are you, Elias?
Greetings, Tapatia Plus. How have you been? No, you hadn't come, right? Tapatia, I didn't see you the previous days. There were a couple of days, right?
He says,
Hope everything's okay and resolved. About the tablet.
Yes, says Martin Gutierrez Pepe. If a gringo gets involved and attacks the Mexican cartels and the soldiers also attack them, what would happen? Would it bother you or would you accept it?
Of course it would bother me. They're soldiers. And if they acted without permission, that's even worse. Was there an intelligence operation or something? In which the Mexican government collaborated, they did some joint work there. That sounds perfect to me, since the problem is serious and the situation is tough. Did you hear they conducted an operation in the mountains where that group had a base? And I don't know what, but yes, it has been done. It is done. Well, that's exactly what is done. In fact, many times a report is made, right? Like, hey, this happened, and then afterwards, in intelligence reports in the United States, they say we did this job. I don't know what. The Mexican government acts like they did it all themselves, and the United States congratulates them. And in reality, what they say over there is that we did it together, right? Yeah, but over here it looks, well, I mean, it's logical here. The way it's presented is different depending on the audience, depending on the country. No, it depends on the situation. Did they come in without permission? Just barge in, right? Well, obviously I really think no one would agree with people barging in like that, right? In any country. So I think that's the normal thing, that's what they say. We should consider creating a new United Nations after this situation calms down, hopefully learning from our past mistakes and oversights. They would need to be like,
the Argentine Rafael, he wants that, he wants change. He says the United Nations right now is irrelevant.
This Grossi has been pretty direct about the issue. I don't know if you've seen his latest posts about it, but basically that's it. I mean, because he's experienced it, yes. I mean, he's lived through it with everything related to the nuclear issue and Iran and all that. I mean, and on one hand, a lot of people would like the United Nations they criticize the United Nations saying it's useless. Yes, they say that, right?
Yes.
Those same people call it useless. But when asked if the United Nations should have more power, they say no. So what's the solution then?
Then make up your minds.
We have to decide. Either the United Nations needs to have more power to be useful, right? Yes.
But it has to be binding?
The thing is, we don't want the United Nations to be powerful. So then, why complain that it's useless? You're the one saying you don't want it to work. I mean, either we want it to work and give it more power, or you don't go. Or it just remains an institution that's basically just for show, basically. So, I mean, what do we want? And that's the thing.
That's the debate. Greetings to Loki Thor, Panterita Sismica, Rotera Bueno Naido, who's always working hard, and Brezeca says Gires. He says there are some good people in immigration. I have an uncle who's married to an aunt, and he worked for many years at the border. He got to help a lot of people. He's an American who loves Latinos and migrants, proving many Americans truly love Latinos. Greetings, Gires.
Yes, totally.
Says Maria Cruz. And is it true that right now Trump ordered the seizure of 4 Russian ships? Did Daddy Trump get mad at today's Oreshnik right now?
Says Charlie Fate about the comment. How interesting, he says. With permission or without permission? Fighting drug traffickers is fully legal and legitimate. Drug traffickers don't give warnings, so asking the government to do so is expecting it to act like them. Because if you tell me, I mean, with that justification, oh, it's that they don't ask for permission, so the government shouldn't ask for permission either, or do governments ask for permission and they should do whatever they want, right? I mean, for the institution, the government has to have institutional care, and if it doesn't, then the one who is governing is a criminal, right? If you justify it, you know I'm the good guy, right? I don't follow the laws just because I'm the good guy. Later, they'll do whatever they want to you and won't care what happened. Just saying he was a narco. You just say, oh, wow. And what are the proofs? No, well, who knows, right? I mean, really, it's like that. If we can't, everything has to be maybe it's slower this way, but it's institutional, because if not, then abuses are committed with the idea of making things safer. Run over anyone you want without consequences. You become the criminal, the villain in the story, so to speak. Right? So that's the point. Suddenly people want quick solutions. But for quick solutions, basically you have to sacrifice your freedom. You have to sacrifice your security. So you ask yourself, what's the point? Why change if it means sacrificing everything? Let those chasing criminals do their job. Definitely yes. Under the law, today there are laws that really favor these groups. Let's change the laws. No. What's the problem, right? I mean, we have to do things. What do we need to do legally to solve the problems, right? I mean, that's the point. Yes, we must be tough, but within the law, right? Because if not, then the one who accepts breaking the law is basically allowing the government to become criminal, and then the problem is going to be even bigger. Because suddenly, since it was accepted that the law could be broken, then everything else goes too, right? And to the point where maybe you're lucky enough to have a government that achieves a great change, you say, wow, let me applaud, that's excellent, perfect. Then another government comes in, very popular but highly corrupt. Deep down, people vote for him. And once he's in, he says, look, they left everything easy for me because now it's allowed to break the law. So let me do my thing, right? So we have to think not only about the government we have now, but also about future governments that always are controlled, that they are controlled. Because if not, the problem is serious. I mean, the moment you have an autocrat that you allow those autocrats to operate, sooner or later that goes wrong, right? That's what history has taught us. If you let the government have too much power, sooner or later things go wrong. And that's something that happens over and over again. No,
Mario Cruz, no. Trump hasn't ordered the seizure of any of the ships. No, that's not true. As for Lopez Obrador, he hasn't even responded to that issue yet. And about whether there are American bases in Mexico, no, there aren't. Greetings also to Aurelio, says Adasso. If the United States wants to fight drug trafficking, they should do it on their side. Truly fighting money laundering there would seriously hurt organized crime. But it's not convenient for them if they really control that. And also, well, consumption is always going to be...
If you control consumption, if you control weapons, look, the problem ends quickly, but they control consumption, they control... If you told me, hey, but look, Pepe, there are a lot of awareness campaigns here so that people don't use drugs. Look, there are a lot of organizations here and a lot of budget to work psychologically with addicts. They're working tremendously hard. The media, series, and movies aim to raise awareness so you'll stop using, not just stop doing drugs. That's the effort. They're really working to calm down that whole situation, right? Hey, well, you'd say, and even so, there are still problems. Well, you'd say, hey, you know what? Well, maybe, but no, nothing is being done. I mean, there's not really a big important effort for a change in that matter, right? So what else?
Hello to Max and Ofe. How are you? Let me check who I'm missing. Sorry, it got stuck. Ricardo Sandoval says hello from Panama. Greetings, Ricardo.
Greetings, Ricardo, he says. Trump, in his stubborn plan, at least sent 100 people who had nothing to do with it to the other world. No.
Yes.
Yes, they were involved. How could they not be? And it's not 100 people. Who says that? God gives Cabello, the darkest figure in Venezuela. Are we really supposed to believe Dios Cabello, honestly? Reports mention about 40 people with 32 identified. Cubans published this, showed images, and all the Cubans are present. These aren't people outside the system. I mean, they're part of the problem, right? And unfortunately, yes. Honestly, I expected there would be more serious situations. The truth is, there was no attack. I mean, they didn't fire. I mean, all the missiles Venezuela had, where are they? They weren't launched. They weren't launched, right? No? But look, they weren't launched because they didn't want to launch them. Because there was an agreement there. Yes, I mean, there was an agreement to hand over this person, right? So there wasn't even a single helicopter shot down. They had spent months preparing and had all kinds of missiles, though I don't know which types. I mean, you say, obviously there's a very good Newsweek report on that topic about why not a single missile was launched by Venezuela. Yes.
It's really strange.
Or is it actually an agreement?
Shout out to Tracy in Costa Rica and Ernesto in Puerto Rico. Charlie, how are you?
All right, let's go. It's late, almost 11:30. Alex Giofi, Gires Martin, Fernanda Navarro. Greetings to the community and ISO. Big shout out to Ricardo Bueno and everyone. There are many topics. Francisco Arce, well done.
Good. Greetings to you.
Austin Boston, how have you been? Thanks to Arendt, Mock, and the whole community. A hug, hope you're well. Have a great night, Arendt. We'll be back in the morning with all the info, interrupting regular programming. Thank you for tuning into The Truth. This is PP Live.
The truth is intense, the unusual is real. Here we analyze it, global focus. Don't miss out. Tune into the PP Live channel with PP controlling the signal and Astrid telling it like it is. Raw journalism. Respect is upheld here. Turn on the alert. Don't lose track until next time. Yes, sir, we're taking attendance.